It's Veterans Day. It's 2023. Um, I did my part as best I could. I watched for any relevant material to learn and then to pass those words of wisdom down to my son. Um, of course, I'm listening to like country music in the background, and if like the theme is playing, it's the Chris Young and Kane Brown, like famous friends that probably I've got all these famous friends you probably never heard of. And like as I see like I'm watching and looking for tidbits of wisdom to pass on to my son, about this USS ship, the New York, which I didn't even know existed until this Veterans Day. It came into Pier 88, and I'm just like, oh, let me pass this wisdom on to my son. Um, so, did not know like where I have to work later today. So, for me, I had to look for something to celebrate the veterans that came before him, the veterans that are still out there actively working, and to memorialize their importance in and instill that in him. Best trying to figure it out the best way I can. So to let them know in their innocence, that there is a ship with the U.S. Navy that's the New York. They live in New York State. There's legitimacy not only on the geographical map for the Union of the States, but then there's also a seafaring vessel. This seemed just important to point out. So I pointed it out not only to my son, I showed him the photo of it. He was like, his exact reaction is, that is so cool. And I'm like, yes. I said, you live in a really cool place. Um, and then there is the friends that he has, just to let them know. So we took a moment of silence to make mention of the men and women that are always on their service, that keep them safe and protected while they're growing up. Um, so that happened. So now they know that they have a ship that sails and protects them and represents them as the New Yorker, or at least that's the way I presented it to them. Um, so they knew just how legitimate they are in the world. And then there's this piece on the ABC Channel 7 News right here.
The crew of the USS New York, the Navy ship now docked at Pier 88.
This aired yesterday, but I saved it so I could show my son, and he could see, and he could learn, since there's no place I've ever been where there's like an interactive feature to teach him just how and to keep him connected to the important parts of his surroundings.
And on board that ship right now, Eyewitness News reporter NJ Bergen, a sailor in his own right. NJ.
Yes, Dave, we are live on the deck of the USS New York. It is what's known as an amphibious assault ship. It's tied up here on the Hudson River to commemorate Veterans Day. As you said, the ship's 500 crew members from the Navy and the Marine Corps are all here to take part in the commemorations this weekend here in New York City. As you would expect, some of the crew members are from New York City, Dave. The ship it's extraordinary, really, and not just because it's a 21st century marvel of naval power. The ship is made using 7.5 tons of steel salvaged from the ruins of the World Trade Center. In fact, there are reminders of 9/11 everywhere you turn on board the ship. Yes, it is the centerpiece of the weekend's commemorations that will culminate with the annual Veterans Day Parade through Midtown Manhattan. Thousands expected to line the parade route, as always, to honor the brave Americans who serve and have served in the nation's armed services. City officials have been clear about this, Dave. There are no specific credible threats against the city at the moment, although security is being ramped up this weekend as a precaution. Among those on board the ship is Navy Ensign Glenn Field from Northport, Long Island.
Well, one, it fills me with a pride I probably won't even know how to express for years to come. But also, it's interesting to look back on that day and how much it's impacted all of our lives, our national security, and my purpose in wanting to serve my country. And now I feel like I've come full circle in this. A part of the ship was actually made from remnants of 9/11 and the World Trade Center. Throughout the ship, there's constant reminders, whether it's a subway stop, recovered steel, or plaques from 9/11. In the bridge, for example, you have a fireman's jacket that was actually used on 9/11. I mean, 9/11's impact on the country and New York is definitely an all the time reminder on the ship.
And for me, the fact that they put up somebody from his name is Glenn Field. Growing up Glen Way, I am incredibly grateful, especially having St. John's 1988 pin that I was given from St. John's, the Episcopalians out where they had me growing up here in New York. It's a significant gesture as far as I'm concerned. This is the happy part of my day. And then there's this, because this was a teachable moment for me and my son, which I was grateful for. I didn't have this level of interactive feature with wherever I was at whatever stage I was with my other children. And then I'm going to pan because it goes to the CBS this morning with something that caught my ear and attention. And now, at my level of education, I know that there's something called an espionage. I know there's something that's called a high crime, I think they call it. But this would be the area of people that study these things and know these things. And then there's this, what's in our airspace in New York, which is concerning me on broadcast airspace. But as well as when I look at, and while they're here in the New York Harbor, if they take a small trip out to the Republic Airport, the American Air Power Museum, or the Cradle of Aviation Museum, but really the American Air Power Museum, the museum is dedicated a very specific way for Long Island. So, in American Armor, that's what the locals, whatever. And then I'm going to go to what they're claiming to be happy about on CBS, but it's not all of us are as happy as what is being advertised on the See the BS in the mornings on Channel 2. So I'm going to finish out with this respectfully, and then I'm going to go over to that piece.
And the question many viewers may be asking, can the public get on board the ship? Well, the answer is yes. The ship will be open to the public from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday. Again, as Dave said a moment ago, Pier 88 on the Hudson River. We're live on the USS New York, and Jay Burkett, Channel 7. Eyewitness News.
Just remarkable, the legacy of that ship and its ties to our area. Thank you, NJ. In a programming note, tomorrow, ABC 7 celebrates our heroes who serve with honor. I will be joined by ABC's Stephanie Ramos and Eyewitness News reporter Stefan Kim to bring you the New York City Veterans Day Parade, now celebrating its 104th year. Coverage begins at 9:30 a.m. on Channel 7 and on ABC 7 NY.
So there's that really important piece. And then it goes out to this other thing that's going on in New York at the moment. I don't know where it came from. I don't know how it arrived here. I was never given a vote. I was never given a say. I was never made aware that it existed until almost like it's too late. They have this saying I've heard the humans use before about when they want to do something, but they don't really care what the consequences are. They say something about, I'd rather ask for forgiveness than for permission. And it almost feels like that very forcible way of thinking is what's gone on here. Um, and it is very concerning because it's a growing concern that I have. I've never heard of something called a Diwali. Now all of a sudden it's a thing, while there's this vice president, Camilla. So they mention it here.
Never heard of Diwali until recently, and I have to think that having a vice president of Southeast Asian descent has a little something to do with it.
You still like that name, Holy Chic.
Now, this was quietly going on, I believe, in like the early 90s, when whatever went on in Long Island that took my father's ability to pay for our house and for me to complete my education with the Cold Spring Harbor crew. I mean, I should have graduated from Cold Spring Harbor High School, but for whatever reason, whatever was going on there in poor management, they my father's business went under, and then we were forced to move back to Queens. When I got to Queens, it was almost like that senior year. It felt like being taken like prisoner. I'll be honest. I mean, it was a complete culture shock. No culture I ever recognized. It looked like some foreign invasion, quite frankly, of several different descendants all at once and being thrust into that. Um, and it was like right at like trying to find like who I was supposed to be with. So like that entry ramp on with my people, it and to stay with, it just like disappeared.
Happy Diwali, everyone, and also happy Veterans Day.
Yes, yes.
There is still much more to come here, including.
And this is how this piece begins.
Celebration that is growing here in the United States. Millions of South Asians across the country and many more around the world are celebrating Diwali this weekend. In the last few years, the Hindu Festival of Lights has turned into a season in the U.S., with everyone from Hollywood to the White House throwing parties.
I don't know how this came into season. I don't know when it came into season. It was almost like my America as a child who matches the monetary system by portrait and with some codex. It is like that American culture just disappeared and was replaced with all of this, I don't know, somebody else's culture. I have no idea how to explain it.
It's creating new traditions and a new expression of South Asian culture. CBS's Chanel Call has more. This is a hand embroidered.
But this has a home somewhere else, like this whole culture, this whole way of being. But now here on the East Coast, it's a rival and then making a market for itself and just this expansion. Like, I really don't know where the state is at this point on this topic and subject. And I don't know why the correct surveys are not being done of the population, of like, if we talk about this like designated survivor, keeping the special interest groups out of it for a moment, to have like a home conversation and then approach the business office. So this way it's diplomatic. But it just feels like there's a lot of moving parts going on and not a lot of consultations.
embroidered vest. Like most South Asian Americans, Megha Rao grew up going to India to shop for Indian dresses. That means getting in a plane, traveling 18, 20 hours, being jet lagged. And I just felt like there's got to be a better solution for people in the States to find access to clothing like this. So in 2015, before much of America even knew about Diwali, she launched a clothing line called Holy Chic. It's a blend of East and West. Born in Queens, New York to Indian immigrant parents, Rao wanted to offer tradition with an American twist. This lets you feel connected to your culture in a modern, cool way. Holy Chic has since been featured in Vogue, Elle, and Harper's Bazaar, and worn by celebrities including Mindy Kaling and Lily Singh. With their platforms,
They call these people celebrities? I've never even heard of them. Didn't get a vote from the public relations firm, didn't get a seat at the White House when any of this went into planning. I don't know who was involved in any of this, but the New York crowd that I actually had exposure to did not call me up and said, "Hey Nick, we're going like this, there's this upcoming thing in your lifetime and within your children's lifetime. We really need to have a sit down and a conversation as like Federal Reserve note children here in the correct portrait and lineage. In like the family tree has leaves, and the leaves are important on the tree, as are the fruit of the tree."
it gives us a voice beyond just the scope of our community. Then, this Diwali, Rao's clothes were part of a pop up inside Nordstrom's flagship New York store. Seeing a lehenga and a sari and traditional South Asian clothing being accepted by everyone, that feels surreal. The festival, now a city holiday in New York.
How did it become a city holiday? Who is in charge of the holiday schedule? That's what I don't understand.
And celebrated across the country, from Hollywood all the way to the nation's capital. I think that Diwali becoming a season is amazing. Pooja Bhavishi, founder of Malai Ice Cream, has been busy this.
What does Diwali becoming a season actually mean? Like to the designated survivors and the Federal Reserve note children, like the branch of the head of state family, like the descendants thereof. For those of us that look close enough by portrait to be confused or may be in harm's way if something in somebody else's business office like has a fight, like we really need to be kept in the loop for our own safety. I mean, like in this big world we live in, what does a season actually mean? Like, what do they think it means? Like, it all of a sudden, it's no longer just like a merchant marine thing where they ship items here and then they're sold in the US in like a boutique fashion. But now is that changed? Is that something more? Like, because again, there's this intrusiveness, and I don't have the lines of communication that used to be established in the field. So again, it's disruptive and it's concerning.
Season, from hosting a Diwali cocktail hour with the James Beard Foundation to catering the Vice President's Diwali reception. I wanted to share that joy, that celebration with everyone else, especially.
Well, celebration of vice president. Now that's confusing because is that considered high crime? Like, I mean, again, where is the responsibility of the people that live in the lower 48 states? Like, I would gladly attend conference, summit, conversation to keep myself inside of the Federal Reserve notes and children. But where is my invitational? Like, where is this constant communication between representatives and myself, so I am not being misrepresented or I'm not just put out in direct harm's way?
partially because for me growing up, like Diwali wasn't a thing outside of my home.
Made and sold in Brooklyn, New York, Malai folds the flavors of India
Saffron and cardamom.
into a classic American dessert.
It just felt like me in a product.
This year, the star of Malai's Diwali collection is this.
Gugra is this dessert. It's a pastry pocket that's filled with nuts, cardamom, milk powder, and ghee. It's almost like this Indian cookie dough.
Each bite steeped in tradition,
I remember when my sister had it, she was just like, this tastes like ba, which is what we called our grandmother.
giving way for a new generation to experience a new American Diwali.
Everything's not going to happen the same exact way that it happened during my parents' generation. They're starting traditions now, but we're a part of that.
For CBS Saturday Morning, I'm Chanel Call in New York. I love the vibrancy of all of this, the beautiful clothes, and how about that ice cream, saffron and cardamom?
I know. I never heard of Diwali until recently, and I'd have to think that having a vice president of Southeast Asian descent has a little something to do with it.
We so like that name, Holy Chic. Happy Diwali, everyone, and also happy Veterans Day.
Yes,
It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.